My feeling after we found out about the nuclear meltdown was terrified. A good friend of mine from college had asked me to come and teach at a school in Japan that they had recently purchased. Pretty big leap of faith and moved to Japan. It was somewhere I'd always wanted to visit. So the school that I taught at was a small English school. It was in a little town, or small by Japan standards, of about 155,000 people, called Hitachinaka. It was in the Ibaraki prefecture, which has the largest coastline in Japan. So that day, myself and one other teacher were at a satellite school. I was waiting for my students to show up, and another class had already showed up for my fellow teacher. I was sitting on the ground. I was just knitting, just taking it easy, waiting for my class to start. And all of a sudden, I feel that really little shake. I keep knitting, this is probably nothing. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's when we all go out in the lobby, and my fellow teacher holds on to her students. I take a few of her students, and I'm holding on to them in the doorway. And I will never forget it, because one of the students that I was holding on to, I had my arm around her chest, and it just felt like her little heart was going to explode out of her body. She was so scared. I was so scared. So the first earthquake hit, there was probably about a time of about maybe 10-15 minutes. And in between that time, I was like, what is going on? We were just trying to process it. And a couple of the parents showed up and took their children. But we had a number of kids that were left over with us, and we're trying to figure out, what do we do? And then the second earthquake hit, and that was smaller, but it was still pretty sizable. The entire building was shaking. The staff person, she all of a sudden exclaimed, "Tsunami," and I'm like, no way, that's never going to happen. I was totally in denial. I was trying to process what had just happened, and she kept saying tsunami. So we made the decision to pile all of them into all of the cars that we could get our hands on and head up to higher ground. We had no idea what was going on. And after that point, we said, let's try and get these kids to their parents. Got to one of the kids' grandparents' houses, and they took them all, and we started on our journey to get back to our apartment. When you're in it, it feels like it goes on for hours. I think in total, the first earthquake probably lasted about 30 or 45 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really does. It just feels like your whole world is just unstable. So I think it was the length of it that really made me initially worried that this was going to be a much larger earthquake than we were used to. Also, the fact that a lot of our furniture, a lot of the larger furniture, including our bookshelves, started to shake. That was unusual. And certainly, once we got into the lobby and were standing in the doorways, which we had been taught to do, certainly when I saw the power lines blowing back and forth, I'm like, this is significant. So, I think that was kind of the turning point for me. What we found out later was that particular satellite school had been hit by the tsunami and had been flooded up to the ceiling. So when you're in the middle of it, you don't know what's going on. You don't know where's the epicenter, what's going on with your friends and family. how much damage is there in the actual area? So we didn't really find out how much damage there was countrywide until the next day. You're just trying to survive and just trying to get to safety. Yeah, we found out that the school that we were in had flooded to the ceiling. There was a lot of destruction as we were driving home. A lot of the bridges were out. A lot of cell phone towers were down, or there was so much activity from people trying to contact their friends and family that no one could actually make any calls or texts or get on the internet. And there were a lot of people walking because there was so much traffic and there was so much damage. But it was amazing how people were banding together to help each other. But I think something that this really taught me was kind of the mentality that you need to be in when you're in a natural disaster, recognizing that it pays off to stay calm as much as you can and to recognize that everyone deals with stress and trauma in very different ways. Some people may be dealing with PTSD from prior disasters that they've been in, or they may just be a particularly stressful person. So I think having a lot of empathy for the people that you're with will go so far. So that's a really big thing that I learned really pretty early on, because it just, getting angry at each other, stressing out about things that are out of your control, it just did not pay off. We made it back to our apartment after about 6 hours of waiting on the road, and we had no idea where anybody was. And we were trying to clean up a little bit. And finally, one of us, it was either myself or my fellow teacher who got one text message that came through, and they said they were at a local middle school. So we made our way over there, and we're so relieved to see them. You're sleeping on the ground in this gym, and you've got these massive light fixtures that are overhead, and they're just swaying around with all of these aftershocks that are going around. It just really made me nervous. And so we started talking about it, and collectively made the decision to go back and move in and sleep in one of our friends' apartments altogether. It was risky, but it paid off because we heard later on that the roof of that middle school gym actually had collapsed where we were. The straw that broke the camel's back was when we got word that there might be some radiation in the rain. So that would have contaminated our well water and everything around us. So that's when my family said, "That's it, you're coming home." The next morning after it happened, we saw the papers. We saw the same images that all of you saw back home, of just utter destruction. And then, giant headlines saying nuclear meltdown. I hope that if something were to happen here on a similar scale, if not larger, that we would have a little bit of that respect, or we would observe a little bit of that same respect. Be as patient as you possibly can be. Be as empathetic as you possibly can be. Everybody is in it together. Everybody is scared. Everybody is in the dark about what's actually going on. And everyone has the exact same amount of information that you do. My recommendations for what you should have on hand, I think cash is very important. I think it'll take a while for us to get to any sort of a barter system. And if your experience is anything like mine, the ATMs were down. I think having something in your preparedness kit that can help you pass the time, so maybe a deck of cards or some games, can be really helpful, because you're not going to have quick access to the internet. You're not going to have much ability to watch movies or anything like that. So having something to kind of keep your mind occupied can be helpful and also reduce some of the stress that you're under. I think something to keep yourself comfortable. So something that I suggest is um, having a good pillow. I know that may be unusual, and that may be unique to me, but I know that I'm less stressed when I sleep better. I don't think you're ever going to be fully prepared because you could encounter any number of different uh, disasters, and you just have to be resourceful, be creative, use things that you have on hand that use it in a different way than it was intended because it may save your life. Check on your neighbors. Um, Especially your elderly neighbors, uh, if they've checked to see if they've been injured, if they need any help, if they need water, if they need food. I know that it's really good for BPA to focus in on resiliency and preparedness because we will all be in it together. It's absolutely critical, not just that BPA do this, but that every agency, every workforce take the lead, talk about it, because that really could save somebody's life.